Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hey everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Nick Wright is just finishing up. Did you do it?
Did it.
Finished up his tweet. I should be retweeting in about 8 seconds. Oh, there it is.
There it is,
Come
Jenna
over.
Wolfe.
Oh, they don't let me retweet.
There you go. I got you, Jenna. There you go.
For me.
No problem.
God, I love these guys.
There you go. Episode 103 of First Things First.
It feels like our
Thursday.
103rd episode. It has a feel.
It's awesome. Awesome Friday.
Yeah?
It's a Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday.
That's a callback to you not knowing it was Tuesday. It only took 51 seconds.
That was right
I
after
barely know I
guys.
even done that. Okay, there you go.
Good morning, everybody.
All right.
You look very sharp today, CC. I don't know if it shows on camera, a little pattern in the suit. You look very nice today, man.
Yeah. All the days that end in Y, I'm clean.
Oh, okay. I see it. I see
Let's
it.
do
With
this,
that wavy
people.
hair.
Start this show. You know, when we meet every morning to put this delicious rundown together, lately we can always count on two things. Something about the Super Bowl and that some player on the Cleveland Cavaliers is upset about something. Reports are this morning that LeBron is miffed that the Cavs were unable to deal for Paul George or Eric Bledsoe this offseason, instead acquiring Isaiah Thomas. LeBron also reportedly aggressively recruited PG-13 to not only come to Cleveland, but stay there long term. But that didn't work. So let's kick off this morning's show with the question I asked you, Nick Wright. Is it starting to look like Isaiah might be the problem on this team?
So the reason we're asking, is Isaiah the problem, is because instead of getting Paul George, instead of getting Eric Bledsoe, they ended up with Isaiah Thomas. And you've got to recognize that when the Cavs traded for Isaiah Thomas, the people that cover the league on a daily basis said the big asset in the Kyrie Irving trade was not Jay Crowder, and it was not Isaiah Thomas.
Right.
It was the Nets pick. And so maybe that makes sense for the Cavs long term, but that's where a lot of LeBron's frustration comes from, is you trade away the second best player on our team, a guy we've won a championship with, and the big return is this nebulous asset that I may never see the fruits of. Even if I'm LeBron and I stay, it's very rare for a rookie to have a serious impact in his first couple years in the league. And LeBron's in year 15. So that's where the frustration begins. The frustration then builds when the immediate return, Jay Crowder, has his worst season. And then Isaiah Thomas, right after the trade, we find out injury worse than the Cavs thought. They go back to Boston. We want more than you initially gave us. Isaiah's not going to be ready till Christmas, even not ready at Christmas, not going to be ready until January. Now we're nearing the end of January. He doesn't yet look ready. So I don't think it's like Isaiah Thomas and his bristly personality, or Isaiah Thomas and his lack of connection with Kevin Love. I think it's the whole situation where LeBron knows this might be his last year in Cleveland. LeBron knows his window of time as the best player in the world is at least approaching a close. Right. And what did they get for Kyrie Irving? Right now, not much. And when you see how well Paul George is playing, when you see you maybe could have gotten Paul George and Eric Bledsoe, it adds to the overall frustration.
It adds to the frustration that both of these guys forced trades. Eric Bledsoe forced his way out of Phoenix. Paul George, and let's go back to Bledsoe. Bledsoe and LeBron have some type of relationship. So it's not foreign. And this is not the first time that we're hearing about this. We heard Bledsoe might be available. We knew that Cleveland might be interested in getting him. They weren't able to do it. But if that sting didn't hurt enough, he also went from the West to the East. He went to Milwaukee. So LeBron, when he's sitting there looking, he's like, man, I wish we could have this guy. What a huge asset he'd be to the team. And then now he's made it harder on us because now he's in the East. Now, one of his rivals, Paul George, Indianapolis, they've had a bunch of battles in the playoffs. He's got a lot of respect for Paul George's game. Actually, Paul George elevated to the height of his basketball as far as people recognizing him against LeBron. Like, he played his best basketball in a couple series against LeBron James. So there's a great deal of respect there. He forced his way out of Indianapolis for basically a small price it would take for an all-star player.
A small return, especially at the time, because we didn't know Oladipo was going to turn into this guy. The Cavs could have easily beaten that trade, and they were going to. It was Phoenix that held it up because they didn't want to trade away the number 4 pick.
Right. On paper, it looked like Cleveland had made a better offer than what they actually received for Paul George. So that would have frustration. Now we start the season. LeBron starts hurt. All right? He's able to overcome that. They have the great run that we talk about. But when you get into January, it's like, okay, IT's back. Now, what is our team really like? Crowder's having an awful year. JR's having an awful year. LeBron's got to make this life decision that it's not right now, but you have to look at it. And the number one part of the trade with IT is the asset that's still sitting on the shelf.
That he may or may not reap the benefits.
It's not helping LeBron. So, yes, he would be frustrated with their talent level. This is not a championship team. The deal for Kyrie Irving, I said 2 weeks ago that the Cavs, part of their problem was they missed Kyrie. So, yes, I'm not shocked that LeBron would be upset by where they are right now. And Isaiah not being healthy is part of the problem.
And I just want to add one thing, because I don't want it to be missed in the read you did leading into this. LeBron, if they got Paul George, wanted him to sign long-term. That debunks to a degree this idea that LeBron decided a year ago that this is going to be his final year in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think the majority of people who really have an ear on the situation would think that LeBron hadn't made up his mind. All this stuff that he was going to L.A., that's just TV talk. That's just radio talk. There was really no insight that LeBron would just be going to L.A. just because he had a house there.
I agree with you, but a lot of the people watching the show get their information from TV talk and radio talk, so I just want to further amplify the idea that LeBron that was dead set on this being his last year in Cleveland headed into this year. I don't think there's any merit to it. Now, I don't think he was convinced he was staying forever either.
Right.
But when the Cavs make this trade, they were already planning for life without LeBron. And LeBron is sitting there, I believe, thinking, but you don't know if you're going to have life without me. What you do know is you have the best player in the world right now. Why would we not do everything we can to win championships right now rather than a contingency plan? And that's what that Brooklyn pick is.
Okay, but maybe they thought that's what they were doing, getting Isaiah Thomas, because it certainly looked like Isaiah Thomas was going to contribute a ton to any team, and maybe it was just an outlier year that he had last year. But I would ask you this, if, as you say, everything leads up to this February 8th trade deadline, and that's sort of your, line as to whether or not there are problems with the Cavs and not problems with the Cavs, because you think things are going to get set sort of when that day comes and goes, why, shy of doing this to let the world know that this team needs more, why would you want to contribute more to something that's already done and passed and finished? They didn't make the trade. This is what they have now. And maybe they trade something by February 8th, but this is their lot. So why come out with yet more friction on this team? Why every day something else has to be said to cause more conversations about what's wrong with the Cavs and not, hey, let's try to fix this?
Right. This is not something else coming out. This is just when people look at the situation and you wonder, okay, what could be some of the problems? Then you start to discover, wow, when you look at the team, Isaiah being hurt, the asset of the Brooklyn pick being on the shelf. I don't believe Cleveland was planning for life after LeBron James. I believe that with that pick, they thought that they might be able to parlay that into keeping LeBron. I didn't think that they ever thought they were going to keep that pick for the future, to build the team. Absolutely not. The idea was to be able to keep LeBron in Cleveland, and you can't do that without the Brooklyn pick being utilized on a player.
All right, so to answer your question quickly, and then I want to say one thing about Isaiah Thomas. Brian Windhorst is the man that reported this story. He's covered LeBron since LeBron was in high school. I know Brian a little bit. He's very good at his job. I do not believe that this is new information for Brian Windhorst. I think he knew this over the summer. LeBron wanted Paul George and Eric Bledsoe. And I think a lot of good journalists do, it's long season. You have things in the chamber, and okay, if it isn't going well for the Cavs, this is a piece of information that I don't think it was this week LeBron called Windhorst and said, man, I didn't even want IT. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think that is.
Well, I think it's important for people to know.
This is not the first time this information has surfaced.
Sure.
You know,
the timing of it is what was sort of
that Paul George was
eye-raising
available, and LeBron had interest in getting Paul George.
The added nuance to this that Windhorst did on the podcast was that that is adding to the friction with Isaiah Thomas and LeBron. I do want to say one thing about Isaiah Thomas, and it's why I wouldn't sell all my Isaiah Thomas stock yet. We do have to recognize that even though these guys are pro athletes and famous people and celebrities, they're real human beings. And the last 9 months for Isaiah Thomas have been as difficult of an emotional ride as what any person could deal with. To go from your highest heights as a pro athlete to then within a span of 3 months, break your face, have a serious career-threatening hip injury, tragically and unexpectedly lose a sibling in a car accident, be traded from a team that you were thinking one day might retire your number, to then all of a sudden having to totally change your game to play with one of the most demanding players we've ever seen in a new city with a bigger expectation, arrow or target on your back than ever before, that would be difficult for anyone to deal with. And he's doing all of it with the specter of, am I going to get that big contract hanging over him? So I think it might be a little much for us to expect the fully functional Isaiah Thomas already. I think that it still exists that he could get too close to the level he was last year. It's just a lot for him in these last 9 months.
All right, look, we all have bad moments. We all have things we wish we could have done or said differently. We all have moments in games when after getting a technical foul, we walk around staring aggressively at a ref, not letting it go even after other players hold you back, and then you get kicked out of a game. We all have that. Well, after Kevin Durant got ejected for an NBA high 4th time 2 nights ago, he said some not nice things about the ref that tossed him. Looking back on it, KD knows he was out of line.
I wasn't getting picked on last night. I was being a diva last night. I gotta just own up to it. I watched it when I got home. I was like, man, I was wondering why he was coming at me so hard, but then I watched the plays. I was like, yeah, I look like a jerk out there. Just, yeah, it was bad. I mean, luckily we won and we can move past it, and I can kind of own up to it. So I'll be better next time.
Back out here on First Things First, you see your thoughts?
I'm so glad that Kevin Durant and whoever his alter ego let him out of the cellar, out of the basement, and allowed Kevin Durant, because that's the Kevin Durant that I know. I know the coaches that coached him at Texas. I know the people that knew him at OKC. That's the Kevin Durant that I know. That's why I was so disappointed yesterday. You look like a jerk. Now, he's talking about I acted like a diva and everything. Yeah. It's very acceptable now that you're able to look at yourself and have some perspective.
Yeah.
Man, there's nothing I hate worse than people who don't have perspective, like on their own life. They don't even see like what they're doing and what it does to like their image. Like, you're not that guy, KD. Like, don't be that guy. So for me, it's very, very refreshing because I have made a bunch of mistakes, and a bunch of them publicly. But each of them, I tried to learn from them, and anytime there was an opportunity, I tried to have a genuine apology. And that apology meaning I watched or saw or heard what I did. I realized that's really not who I am or what I want to be, and I'm going to try to get better. My next time, I will react better in that situation. So that was refreshing to see the Kevin Durant that I used to know come from in the basement, tweeting and everything, and giving me a real perspective and good insight. And we don't need to see this. We don't need to see this.
Do you think his behavior will change?
Well, I can just take him on his word. I like listening to interviews. As an athlete, a lot of times I get a lot from the interviews. That right there was a guy who saw himself right after the game. He was like, wow, I see why the ref was coming after me. Mm-hmm. Man, I was acting like a jerk. Yeah, I expect him to be better. Because he said so.
I hope what he said is genuine, and I hope he does adjust accordingly. Because
obviously you don't believe him.
No.
Or you just believe there's some doubt there, or what?
I have a healthy level of skepticism. Because you mentioning that Kevin Durant from Oklahoma City, it's been a long time since we've seen him. And there have been a lot of exit ramps that he has passed where he could have decided, I'm going to go back to that, and chosen against it. He could have decided after his first, second, or third ejection this year. He could have decided it after the embarrassment about the fake Twitter accounts. There are plenty of times he could have said, man, what am I doing? Now, it is, as Cece would say, it is never the wrong time to do the right thing.
Yes.
So if this is the time, I welcome it. You guys know how much I love the NBA, how much I love basketball, and how important I think it is for the faces of the league to conduct themselves accordingly. It's why I got upset when Steph threw his mouth guard at the ref. It's why I haven't liked how Durant's been carrying himself this year. So I hope this is a moment where he's like, man, I can get back. I can still be just as good at hoop and be back to the guy I was in OKC. I just don't know who the real guy is, though. That's my issue. I don't know what is the genuine Kevin Durant because we now have a lot of data on both sides of it. And my fear is, because Cece, you've talked about that KD's not a natural leader. Great basketball player, great scorer, all these things. But that he is not a guy that's just that natural leader personality. My fear is that he is starting to mimic some of the traits of the leader of the team, Draymond Green. The only two guys in the league with double-digit technicals are Draymond and Kevin Durant. Draymond says last week they should fire every single ref in the league. Durant follows that up this week by saying, this ref's out to get me. So I hope that Durant breaks off from that. Because at least with Draymond, it's genuine. That is who Draymond is. But I don't know what the genuine KD is. So I hope that we don't look back on that interview and say, it was, that was just a moment that he said he was going to change where he didn't. Because I would like to enjoy the parts of Kevin Durant that aren't just watching him play hoop, like I said yesterday.
Yes, but like Kevin said, I realize he's human, and I realize all these athletes are human. I realized when LeBron disappeared in the Dallas series, I wasn't going to stop liking him because of that. There have been other guys. Steph, when he threw his mouthpiece, there was things I didn't like. Kobe did things that I didn't like, but I didn't throw them out like they were trash. I look at the behavior. I accept them as human beings. I don't expect athletes to be perfect. So for me, being let down by their overall behavior, that's hard for me to do. I don't necessarily expect that. I expect them to make mistakes, especially when you're living in the public eye. It's hard to be on and be right every day.
There's a difference between making mistakes and bad behavior. I mean, Tiger Woods made a pretty bad mistake, and we all kind of rallied around him to come back. I mean, there are athletes that have made one or two big blunders and have come back. I wonder, though, I mean, there's a pattern of behavior here from Kevin Durant, if this is something that we will actually see, or this is another way for him in the spotlight to do something. Plus, it takes 80% of what our show content is out if all of a sudden he becomes a nice guy. Listen, really, it's about us.
Cece, I agree with you that I'm not going to, it's not like if KD gets one more technical this year and be like, see, he was lying. But we are going to be able to tell if he continues the Golden State version of Kevin Durant, who he's been the last 18 months, or gets back to the Oklahoma City version. And by the way, he can do whatever he wants, but I think it fairly can affect how people view him.
I think that Durant will always be in a lot of people's mind, just like LeBron. When LeBron left Cleveland, there were a lot of people that hated LeBron for no reason.
But did they come back?
When KD left, some of them did, because he went back to Cleveland and won. When KD left, a lot of people don't like KD because he joined Golden State, and that will continue regardless of what KD's behavior is.
The Celtics beat the Clippers 113-102 last night. It was following a team meeting. Yep. And it doesn't sound like anyone made bold accusations about other players pretending to have illnesses, but simply a way to hash things out. Kyrie said team meetings happen all the time. Steve, what am I talking about here? What's with all the team meetings? Are they an effective way of altering chemistry on a team, or is it just something to check off the list?
I've always said you can have maybe one team meeting. This comes from a football
in the football locker room.
In the football locker room,
you got too many crazy guys to have a team meeting to give them unauthorized. You got 10 guys who never said nothing all year, and then all of a sudden they like, I got my opinion. Yeah. So no, it's not the best thing for a football team.
Right. You get one, and then you're like, okay, and these are the three people that get to speak. Okay? Like you, and you.
Last time you spoke, what'd you say? I hit a guy in the head with an axe.
Yeah.
No, not a speaking role for him.
Yes, exactly. So I look at all these team meetings in the NBA, and I get it. You have a longer season, and if you need to hash things out, whatever. I'd rather do an arts and crafts project personally. Just come in there, make a card for your mom, make a card for your peoples, maybe your wife,
idea,
right?
Stink.
Yeah, let's make some cards.
This is the thing. They got too much time on their hand. All right, they're not practicing. They played the Lakers. They played the Lakers tonight. They watch a lot of film. But then at the end of that, they see the film. Oh, this is not good. They ask the coaches. Sometime to leave the room. Sometime the coaches are in the room. It's an easy thing to do. It's just a normal part. We have a lot of unofficial meetings with the show. Like sometimes we decide we see something we don't like. Like after the show, we'll have a meeting. We won't call it a team meeting, but that's just a normal part of business. And they're not practicing. They're at the hotel. Like having a meeting is not necessarily a big thing, especially all meetings aren't like the Cleveland Cavaliers team meeting. So I believe a lot of them can be constructed, especially when the groups are smaller compared to a 53, 70 people in an NFL locker room.
Well, the number of people here is the enormous distinction. And so I just want to draw one important note for the audience. NFL teams, because there's 53 guys, 70 guys, and you really want to include the practice squad, everyone, injured reserve, you almost by necessity have to break down into smaller groups, whether you want to call them cliques or positional groups, whatever it is.
Groups, and you typically have one leader per group.
Right, and so you have to do that. The NBA teams, it's 12 guys, really only 8 or 9 that matter. One of the reasons sometimes a team meeting can be good and necessary is if an NBA team that small, 10 guys, have broken down into 2 or 3 factions, 3 guys here, 4 guys here, to bring them all together and say, guys, we actually do all have to like each other, or at least have a good working relationship. When Stink's playing, if Stink has a problem with a defensive back on the team, I don't think it really has much, it doesn't really affect.
All 70 people in the
No, but I'm saying
you
guys can still effectively do your jobs, even if the offensive line and the corners don't love each other.
You're so compartmentalized. I mean, if you took out, how many years did you play? 15, 16 years?
16.
16 years. If you took out all 16 team photos, there's 5 or 6 guys in every team photo that you wouldn't be able to name, correct?
Yes.
Same for me. I mean, I could go through a whole season where I really never talked to a DB. We just, our paths don't cross. We're in different meeting rooms. We're in different. So there is that part of football that's different.
And the culture is different. Even if Stink does not like a defensive back, let us get on the game in Sunday. Let the defensive back take a cheap shot on the quarterback or the wide receiver, and you can believe all that is out the window. That's the biggest thing between the NBA and the NFL. Like, man, we are like a pack of wolves. And if something happens to the pack, like, we will all come together. Even though you might not like a guy. You'll be fighting a guy against another guy who you don't like, but he's your teammate. And that's one of the biggest differences I see in NBA players in their meetings and the unity than NFL.
We take staff pictures all the time. Half the time, Nick's like, that guy's with us?
Yes.
Man, I didn't know Deontay's name for 3 months.
Or what he did. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's correct.
We also have a staff of 12. None of them work for Jenna. Nick and I are split with one person.
Guys, we're just hours away from Super Bowl 52.
How many hours?
How many hours, Nick?
I don't know, Jenna. I don't know.
I guarantee you he knows by the end of this week.
I'm out of the hours business.
Go ahead. Just effort. While that game does not ever focus on one player, there is one player we are focused on this morning, one Rob Gronkowski. We learned yesterday that the 5-time Pro Bowler did indeed suffer a concussion on the Barry Church hit in the AFC Conference Championship. That one right there. Patriots officially listed him on their injury report for next Sunday. First, I asked Nick how many hours till the Super Bowl?
259, if my math's correct.
Told you! Love Nick. Stink, how pivotal is Gronk?
251, actually.
251.
I take it back.
Yeah.
You got it wrong.
How many hours to Super Bowl, Stink?
Yeah.
How many Super Bowls you played in?
3.
Okay. How many hours?
I have no idea. So Gronk is pivotal in that he is their best matchup guy. He is their best move guy. And you watch all the different places they play Gronk from. They'll play him outside wide as an X receiver, right? They'll move him outside the numbers. They'll play him in line at the weak side tight end. They'll play him at the strong side tight end. Play him at the fullback position. and he'll line up in fullback, and he'll run routes out of the backfield. He's their most pivotal wham guy, so he motions across and traps a defensive tackle, a defensive end in their running game. This is a guy that plays all the way across the football field, and he's your number one matchup guy. He's a pivotal component to their success in the long term. And you know what? They missed, when he went out of that game, man, they missed Gronkowski. They found a way to win it, but that guy is their best matchup guy. So he is a pivotal part of that offense.
And the proof is in how they use him. Since 2013, so Gronk missed one postseason, but since 2013, or missed a couple postseasons, I should say, the 3 games in the playoffs where he has double-digit targets, what are they? Oh, okay, the conference championship game they lost against Denver, where they were needed to come back. They needed to find a way, go to our best weapon. They targeted him 15 times. How about the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, where they're trailing double digits in the fourth quarter? Target him 10 times. How about a divisional playoff game against Baltimore? They only win that game 35-31, close game. They target him 13 times. Like, they use Gronk almost... I feel like they don't use him as much as they could in games they are winning easily because he does have the injury history. I know I mentioned that to Coach Mangini. He dismissed it. I disagree with him. Like, I think they are cautious with their usage of Gronk because they know we need him in our biggest spots. We need him in this coming game. And so if you're blowing a team out, is it worth throwing Gronk over the middle when he can have his legs or his head hit? Right. So, but you see how the Pats use him against the best defenses and against their best opponents, and the answer is a lot.
Because there's not one guy that's going to step up and fill in if he's not there. I mean, that's how crucial he really is to this.
He's so crucial. Besides Tom Brady, he's the most important player. Nick, I totally disagree with you as far as the usage. Bill Belichick, he doesn't monitor guys like that. He doesn't play football like that. He doesn't coach like that, where he would maybe count your reps and everything. And, man, Gronk, we don't know how long Gronk's going to play. Like we got some crystal ball, like, oh, it's not like Gronk's going to have a 15-year career. Like, we do know that. Belichick utilizes you when you are in your prime better than other coaches. The one thing about Gronk that we all miss, and the one conversation, the one-on-one conversation that I've had with Tom Brady, it was this summer. It was when I was in Israel with Mr. Kraft and the family in the Hall of Fame, and he FaceTimed Tom Brady. And he said, Tom, I want to introduce you to someone. And he put me on the phone. It was like, hey, Chris, what's going on? I was like, hey, Tom, did Mr. Kraft tell you the new news? He was like, no, what is it? It's like, I'm joining the Patriots. He said, thank God. I'm tired of throwing to all these short guys. I've been telling them for years, man, get me a big guy. I said, well, that's good. Great. You're going to love the next news. He was like, what is it? I said, I'm only playing in the red zone. He said, you can play wherever you want to. But it's a fact. It's a lot easier to throw. That's why he loved Randy Moss, not only because of his personality, not only because of his football IQ, but because he had the ability as a tall receiver. Tom's margin of error is wider. That's why he also loves to throw to Gronk. Not only is Gronk's catch radius, but Gronk being 6'6". It's a huge advantage throwing against linebackers and safeties. A lot of times people don't look at that. Well, the height of the wide receiver, is that important? Absolutely. If we look at Tom, probably the biggest throw besides the 3rd and 18 was the deep throw down the sideline to Brandon Cook. The one he put all the arc on the ball, and he ended up getting pass interference. Tom throws that ball on purpose because as a cornerback, A.J. Bouye is taller than Brandon Cook. So when they're running down the sideline together, Tom can't see him. So he can't drill the ball into him like he does with Gronk. You have to put more arc on the ball, and also it allows the safety to come over to make a play on the ball. So the bigger the wide receiver, it really does help. And Tom Brady has not been blessed in his 17-year career with throwing to a lot of taller guys.
When you're down, I don't think it's the way you call plays as a coaching staff. It's the way the quarterback and that particular receiver decide, hey, man, I'm coming to you. Like, I'm going to get off my first target, even though that's the number one I'm supposed to throw to, because I like the matchup with you. And I was in an AFC championship game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, late pivotal game, fourth quarter, and we called play in the huddle. And Shannon Sharp and John Elway are having a conversation, and it basically came down to just get open.
Yes.
I'm coming to you, Sharp. Just find a way to get open. And, you know, there was no route combination. It was, hey, dude, you get open.
Brad Johnson, him and I had an understanding. He looked at me, And he say, is there any doubt? So it's forget what the play is, Chris. Forget who's the primary. I'm getting ready to come to you.
Wait, quickly, what's the schedule now going to be for him and when he has to be cleared by in order to play?
It's going to be every day. Every day they're going to try to monitor him to see if he advances in the protocol. So
but he could be right up to game time?
He can't be 3 steps short of clearance 2 days before.
Yes.
So
okay,
like
so
that. So
he
you can clear basically a step a day. There's 2 of the steps you can clear in 1 day. But if he's like still in step 2, and it's Friday before the game, he's not playing. But he could be in step 3.
Yeah.
For
not
a week
not to make light of brain injuries though. Too. They asked Gronk a few of the questions. He didn't know the answers. But
that was when he didn't have the concussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So they didn't know. They didn't know how to measure it.
His baseline test is a question for Gronk in general. That is true.
Welcome back to First Things First. We are joined by the birthday boy, Mark Schlereth.
Oh, my gosh. I was going to try to be the first. I know it's hard to beat Mama.
Yeah.
I know she was on it.
It's all
okay?
good.
Happy birthday, bro.
Thank you,
Many
brother.
years of working with you.
Happy birthday, man.
Get this, the 20th anniversary of Super Bowl 32, in which yours truly played the Green Bay Packers on his 32nd birthday.
Love that.
So
How
you're
about that?
52 today.
I'm 52 today.
Man, you look good, bro.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Feel
Very,
good.
very nice.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
What,
Thank you.
CC? Chill, CC.
I have a special order of steroids coming for you for the next segment.
Man, I'd have taken them. I already said that. But
After
we don't
that
have
last
to do that right
argument,
now.
you need to get on some.
Hey, guys, on the scale of great performances by people named Nick Faldo, the 96 Masters, Nick Swisher, the 2009 Yanks, Nick Wright, the great shoulder dislocation of 2003, there is Nick Foles.
That's why you texted me this morning and asked when I dislocated my shoulder?
I am a woman of her facts.
Thank you.
Nick Foles in the NFC Championship game of 2018. What a game. Well, now he is 1 win away from legendary status. And don't think Foles doesn't know how hard that 1 win will be.
Great team. I mean, we all know them. They've had a dynasty. They've had an amazing, they're one of the greatest teams of all time throughout the course of the last 20 years. Their defense plays well. They play really well as a team. They adjust really well throughout the game. You've seen that throughout the course of years. You saw it throughout this last game, just their adjustments. They keep adjusting. They have intelligent coaches. They have intelligent players. So it's a great task for us.
All right, Mark Schlereth, you got your Eagles offense,
Yes.
you got your Patriots defense. How do you see this one matching up? Who's got the edge there?
Well, I mean, I would look at just player for player, for instance. You talked about these 2 rosters, other than the quarterback and the head coach. I mean, I think the Philadelphia Eagles roster is better than the New England Patriots roster. And I look at the way they're constructed as an offensive line, as a group of 3 running backs that get a lot of run. They don't have any kind of lift the top of coverage guy. Nobody's special on the outside, but they've got really good players out there. They've got a great scheme. Their real special matchup guy is Ertz, the tight end. I think they match up. I think they match up exceptionally well, and I think their roster is as talented as it can be. I look at, Lane Johnson as good as it gets at the right tackle position. Brooks, right guard, is great. Jason Kelsey's a special center.
Yes.
The way he can run, the way he can get outside. They've got a special group. Vaitai has actually played really well at left tackle. So, like I said, they have a very special group. I think just athletically, this is a great matchup. I think the Eagles are a better roster overall, top to bottom, on both sides than the Eagles.
Yeah, I think there's going to be 2.
I
think there's going to be 2 things that really determine this game, as far as these units in particular. Philadelphia, how many big plays can they generate with their offense against this defense? Philadelphia, from an offensive standpoint, I'm not going to say the red zone. I'm going to extend the red zone to the 35-yard line. They got a good kicker, so if you get anywhere 30 to 35, you pretty much got points. When they get to the 35, how many times can they score touchdowns? Because for me, that's very, very big. New England is very, very good at red zone defense, shutting people down. That's the only part of New England's defense that I would say is elite or exceptional. So Philadelphia's inability to be able to make big plays, which they haven't been able to do except the Vikings game. And then the consistency of New England, it's not a personnel-based defense. It is a scheme-based defense. So Doug Peterson is going to have to call some plays. But what do I say by that? Well, every team calls plays. No, Philadelphia, because they don't have superior talent as far as their skilled guys, they run a speed sweep. They run a RPO, a run pass option with Nick Foles, and run a lot of quick slants in. Those are the things that they're going to have to do. The game plan and how they attack it, are they going to be aggressive, to me determines, is this offense of Philadelphia better than the New England defense? But they have to be just as aggressive as they were last week. In Doug Peterson's press conference, he said, we're going to go out there and go after Minnesota, be aggressive.
They were.
But not reckless. All right, and they were very successful. You can't expect Nick Foles to have 140, quarterback rating, in the Super Bowl. So this is a tough matchup, but the personnel, as Stink mentioned, of Philadelphia, even without Jason Peters, it does match up well with New England's defense.
So when I look at this matchup, and tell me this makes sense to you guys, I think the Eagles have an enormous edge in the trenches. And I think the Patriots have the edge the further away you get out from the start of the play. Like, I don't see how the Pats can get a good pass rush on the Eagles, like without doing something exotic. Because of the offensive line that you're talking about, and because the Patriots, we've talked about all year, don't have any great pass rushers. In fact, the best pass rusher they've had the last 5 weeks or 6 weeks has been a guy they picked up off the street in James Harrison, a 39-year-old. Now, in the secondary, the Pats started the year off wanting to play man-to-man. They couldn't. Stephon Gilmore wasn't on the same page with everybody. They ended up going more to zone. Bill Belichick talked about, we need more practices, we need more time. I do think this is a game where if they do get any semblance of a pass rush, they're going to be able to play man-to-man against these Eagles receivers. Like, I think the Pats are going to be able to do what they want in the secondary. I know that sounds almost incongruous. Like, one team's going to have an advantage up front, the other team's going to have an advantage on the back end. But just from a personnel standpoint, I think the Eagles have an enormous edge at the front of the play, and the Patriots have the better personnel, cornerbacks versus wide receivers on the back end.
One thing that negates the edge from a talent standpoint is the scheme. All right? You are not going to start the game and run on New England. Right. All right? Because of their gap control and because of the way they play defense, it is hard to run, even though they don't have the best personnel.
Right. You go back to their first playoff game this year against the Tennessee Titans, 8 sacks in that game. And one thing I know about playing against Bill Belichick, I mean, I was with the Washington Redskins when he was a coordinator with the Giants. I played against Bill when he was with the Jets. I played against Bill since he's been with the Patriots. So I played against his teams multiple times. One thing he does to you up front, when he basically, without the great pass rusher, without the great personnel, they scheme up pressures better than anybody else in the league. And what I mean by that is they'll get in a look that makes you question. That makes you, is that a 3 technique? Is that a 4-eye technique? Where are they lined up? And are they in a 4-man front? Are they in a 3-man front? They do a better job of that stuff, and they get on edges because of it. They make you hesitate for a second. They make you communicate. And that's the biggest thing. When you break the huddle, and you go to the line of scrimmage, if your communication isn't tied together, because it's 5 guys acting as one kind of working organism.
Yes.
And I will tell you this, man. We are the worst athletes on the field. So if you get us edged because we're confused, automatic advantage goes to you. And that's one of the things they do. That's how they got 8 sacks against the Titans. I mean, that's the way they do it.
So you talked about coming out with an aggressive game plan Doug Peterson will have with this Eagles offense. And I just wonder how much of that will be scripted and folded into it. Nick Foles starting his first Super Bowl, the nerves that this offense is going to have, maybe overthrowing or going too far or being too aggressive. Does that factor into it? Because you also said they're not going to run on this right off the bat on this Patriots defense.
You have to realize, too, where Doug Peterson comes from. And, Jenna, you make a great point, and that's based on your past relationship with Andy Reid. All the coaches from the West Coast have that first 15 plays. So you are right. That will be taken into consideration. But they can't get to victory without being aggressive. And you can't, when you have a backup quarterback, you can't start him off conservative and then say, as the game goes on,
okay,
we're going to let you get aggressive. What happens is Blake Bortles. You start him off aggressive, then you get in the game, you're like, he is Blake. Let's dial it back. Let's Nick Foles. But because the game wasn't contested, they didn't have to pull back the aggressiveness in the Minnesota game. But their path to victory is being very, very aggressive as a play caller, Frank Wright as the coordinator. Him and Doug, they have to get together and try to come up with an aggressive but not reckless approach in those first 15 plays. Because if you look at New England, how did they come back against Jacksonville? What did they do? They started blitzing. They started playing man-to-man. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's the way that they start the Super Bowl, because they are not afraid of the wide receivers and the skilled guys of Philadelphia.
I think you look at what Doug Peterson has done, and go back to the divisional playoff game against the Atlanta Falcons. Early in that game, first couple drives, Nick Foles was awful. First 2 drives.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden they go to the RPO stuff, the run-pass option. Yep. And one of the things you have to understand is you're flagging that ball. You're like handing it to the back and you're looking inside, right? And you're showing that defense. Well, what happens? All those guys get antsy on defense, so all that underneath coverage gets locked.
Yep,
they
frozen.
Stand there.
Yep.
Now there's big openings. And the thing about that offense, and it's very collegiate, the thing about that offense is as you flag that, you know, you're looking at that defense, but you've got X slant on the backside, and you've got one receiver you're looking at. And it becomes a very easy pop, throw, you know, and there's no underneath coverage.
Get you into a rhythm.
You get into a rhythm, and they went to that in Atlanta. And for what, now it's 6 quarters, 7 quarters now.
Yeah.
7 quarters, Nick Foles has been lights out. Yeah. And they start that way. Now, they don't finish that way because once they get him into a rhythm, now they operate the offense.
They can run more of a pro offense.
And the one thing I didn't think Nick Foles would be able to do is extend plays. He hasn't done it with his legs. He's done it within the pocket. Extend the play, move, manipulate, keep your eyes down the field, and deliver the ball.
The big touchdown pass on the right
2-pump
sideline.
fake. Yes, against Minnesota.
It looked like he was sacked twice, and it was, and they ended
that's
up.
why Terrence Newman jumped off that.
Both times they gave up coverage.
Yeah. Right, that dig route. He just said, "Oh, you got a clock in your head. You know it's got to come out." Oh, I jumped it. Boom, touchdown.
All right, whether or not you think Nick Foles deserves credit for the Eagles' success, you have to believe the Eagles' defense does. Philly's defensive unit has been the driving force to the Super Bowl run, allowing just 27 total points over their last 4 games. Even Bill Belichick, who we all know talks a lot about things he loves, like early morning walks on the beach after it rained the night before.
Hairy arms.
Has been impressed. You know, you just killed that whole visual for me. Has been impressed by the Eagles' defense, notably that incredible line.
They do a good job. They got a lot of good players. They have good inside rushers. They have good outside rushers. I mean, Cox is as good as anybody in the league. At his position, he's a very disruptive player. Great, hard to block, run, pass, no matter what it is. Good edge rush, and they come hard every play. These guys really play hard.
I'm definitely not going to come out and make a comment about how effervescent all of his answers are. That is not what I'm going to do. But let's talk about slowing down this Eagles defensive line. Schlereth, how hard is that going to be?
Well, I mean, it's exceptionally difficult, but I think one of the things you have to understand is, so if Cris and I were lined up against each other and he was playing defensive tackle and I was playing offensive guard, and he beat me clean, meaning I didn't even touch him. He just, whoop, swim move, beat me clean. On a 5-step drop, it still takes about 1.7 seconds to get the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's how long it takes. Brady's average get-off time is probably about 2.1, 2.2 at the longest. He is so into getting rid of the ball, getting it out of his hands between 1.5 and 2.5 seconds. Well, you do that on a consistent basis without holding on to the football, that becomes a secondary issue because your defensive line is never going to get there. They're just not. And so, yeah, they're hard to block. Yeah, they're exceptionally disruptive. All those things are true. But if you get rid of the ball in that time frame, if I just impede your progress a little bit, ball's gone.
Just don't whiff.
At the best you're going to do is get a late hit on him, you know, or just get a hand in his face. So those are the things that you think about. You can control the tempo of a pass rush with which, in the way that you approach, and the 3-step drops and allowing guys to be aggressive and allowing the offensive line to attack and the run fake and all those things that they do exceptionally well, getting rid of the ball. You can wear it. If you do it that way through the first 3 quarters of the game, you can have a defense so worn out by the 4th quarter that it really doesn't matter how much of an advantage their players have over you athletically, because defensive linemen at some point, they run out of fuel.
Yes.
If you know what you're doing as an offense and you balance that stuff up and, you do a couple of max protections, a 3-step drop, you run the ball, you run a draw, you run a trap, you set people up, it's amazing how much energy they don't have come the fourth quarter, as in that Jacksonville game in the fourth quarter, man, they're just, Brady's cleaning that pocket and they're throwing the ball down the sideline.
As in their last couple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Right. That's Seattle ran out of gas. Atlanta definitely ran out of gas.
Sure.
The distinction I would draw, though, between Philadelphia and those two teams that played in the Super Bowl or Jacksonville is while those teams had, particularly Seattle and Jacksonville, elite front-end talent at their defensive line, I don't think they had the depth Philly has. CC, it's a stat you've brought up all year. They have 7 defensive linemen who've played at least 400 snaps this year.
Yes.
So they have the ability to have elite or near elite level players fresher than most teams. And it's because this is something I really respect about Philadelphia. They have made a damn investment in this spot. First round pick, Brandon Graham. First round pick, Fletcher Cox. You acquired Timmy Jernigan, a top pick from Baltimore. Second round pick, Vinny Curry. That's guys drafted. Those are the veterans. Then you bring in Chris Long, a former number 2 overall pick, if I remember correctly, but who won the Super Bowl last year. You also what'd you do in the first round this year? First round pick, Derek Barnett. So you have 6 guys with elite talent at different phases of their career who you can rotate in as pass rushers or as D tackles. Like, that's an enormous edge. Your point on Brady's a great one, that if he's getting it out quick, it doesn't matter. But the fatigue factor, I think, applies less to Philly than almost any D-line in the league.
But there's one other aspect to that. They'll get in that no huddle, and they won't allow you.
Still in my thunder now.
Right. They won't allow you to get out of that personnel group. So they'll do that, 4 or 5 times, 4 or 5 drives. They'll get in that, and they just won't allow you to rotate.
Right. The other thing is, too, we have to, from an energy standpoint, Jenna, you're the huge workout fitness guru on the show. From an energy standpoint, in the Super Bowl is a little bit different, Mark. You're the veteran of that. How much food you're going to eat, how much is the pregame, and then you have to refuel at halftime. Now, the defensive line that they faced in Atlanta, if Philadelphia had that lead, they would be Super Bowl champions because they have too many rushers. And their secondary is better than Atlanta's secondary. But you mentioned there's 2 things in negate a great defensive line. Number 1 is no huddle. Now, we are at a neutral site, so the ability to run no huddle is greater in U.S. Bank Stadium in Super Bowl 52 than at any other time, unless they were playing at Gillette. Right. So that will be the number 1 thing to attack that. Bill Belichick knows better than I do. They got 7 guys with 400 snaps. The other thing, what do you do to negate great rushing lines or great penetrating line? Throw a lot of screen passes. All right, so not only are you running up the field, but then when they throw the ball, now you have to chase the guy. And watch New England after the screen passes, how many times they run no huddle. So they take it, they make sure that your tank is empty at the end of the game by the way that they go about it. Well, for Philadelphia fans, Dusty and the rest of the crazy crazies, well, let me give you something encouraging about what you're doing. Tim Jernigan and our boy, Fletcher Cox, they play defensive tackle. The one place that New England does not want to get pressure is through the middle. We're used to edge pressure. Tom steps up a little bit, moves to his left or his right, but Tim Jernigan and Fletcher Cox being at defensive tackle, and the center is undersized. Both the guards are undersized. So that would, if you look for Philadelphia at penetration, not on the outsides, but through center guard gaps.
Le'Veon Bell is talking about his contract with the Steelers. However, this time, it doesn't seem to be contentious. Bell told reporters yesterday that the 2 sides are a lot further along in negotiations than they were last year, and that he thinks they'll eventually be able to reach an agreement. CC, should the Steelers give Le'Veon a long-term deal?
It's going to be very difficult. It's hard to let talented players just walk and join another organization. I do believe he deserves a new contract, but I wouldn't sign him more than 3 years. And the reason why, because I know Ben's probably going to play another couple years. They're paying him a huge dollar. AB, Antonio Brown, he's being paid the highest paid receiver. So now you're starting to look like one of those other teams with all your money is on the offense. Seattle, all their money's on the defense. Their offensive line struggle. So what are you going to start to see? How do they improve their defense? Because they need a better defense than what we've seen. They did give up 40-something.
45.
To Jacksonville. All right, so that defense, we don't know who their middle linebacker is going to be. They need another pass rusher. So they have other needs that, to me, are easier to fill than getting another running back. He deserves a contract, but I wouldn't sign him long term. I would give him a 2 or 3 year deal, and then I would be able to move on so that from a salary cap standpoint, I have flexibility. I believe it's easier to get a running back, either through the draft or through free agency, that can give you productivity.
What about a 5-year deal that you can get out of after year 3? Would that be like one of those deals
yes. And also, he's one suspension from spending a lot of time away from football, too. So you have to consider all those things if you decide to give him a long-term contract.
But would you be okay with that? Like a 5-year deal where it's basically the first 2 years are guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be happy with that. Yes, of course, we would like it as management, but I don't think he's going to be happy with that type of deal.
Because here's what I would try to do if I were the Steelers with Le'Veon Bell. Because I understand the hesitation about giving any running back their second contract. Even one of the very best in football is these guys seem to be best in their early 20s. The more carries, the more workload, and he's coming off a very heavy workload year. I get why teams are skeptical and hesitant to do it, especially because Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round exists. Like, you can find running backs later in drafts that can come in and have enormous production. Le'Veon Bell was not a first-round pick, so I understand that part of it. But I think your window with the Pittsburgh Steelers is right now. I think your window is, and your path to the Super Bowl is great offense. I know they lost to the Jaguars, and I understand that the defense looked bad in that game. The defense is going to be a little cheaper because they've spent so many first-round picks on the defense over the last few years. They still have a few of those guys left on rookie contracts. I don't want to lose the league's best running back or one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the league in my final couple years of really good Ben Roethlisberger. Like, I absolutely want to bring back the core that gave me, in my eyes, the most dynamic offense in football this year, at least for another season. If that means I could be in a tough salary cap situation in 3 years because Le'Veon's no longer productive and he's got 1 year left of some guaranteed money.
Maybe it makes it okay if you get a Super Bowl or you get something like that.
If your window stays open, like, to me, that would be worth it. It's why when we talked about this last week, I said I think he's going to stay in Pittsburgh. I think they want to keep that group of triplets together.
Yeah, but I can also support them moving on.
Okay.
Yes, and getting another player in free agency and draft a player.
All right, let's move on to Le'Veon's teammate, the aforementioned Big Ben, who once again is talking about his coaches, but this time he's defending his head coach, Mike Tomlin. Ben said he disagreed with the perception that Tomlin didn't give the Steelers the necessary discipline for its playoff run. He said that the Steelers were focused and ready to go before their loss to the Jaguars, but they just weren't the best on that day. Nick, what was your reaction to that?
I mean, it's good to hear from Big Ben. It's hard to mesh a lot of Big Ben's comments with other Big Ben comments. Like, one of the reasons that people have wondered if Mike Tomlin has full control of this team, if Mike Tomlin runs too loose of a ship, is because of comments Ben Roethlisberger has made. And, to be fair, because of some of the actions the team has let Ben Roethlisberger do over the course of a long time, even before Mike Tomlin was there, I suppose right before he got there, without much penalty. So it's good that he's supporting his head coach. It always felt to me like his issue was not with Mike Tomlin. It was more directly with Todd Haley. Todd Haley's now gone. Big Ben seems to be in better spirits. But a lot of the reason there was ever a discussion about are they focused? Are they locked in? Are they too undisciplined? Is because of things Big Ben has said in this very same radio spot that he now said this.
It's a bunch of other things through the years, okay? Big Ben could have alleviated some things in press conference, but when your coach is on the field, when Baltimore's running down for a kickoff, all right, that's one of many things. Bad coaching decisions in critical spots, all right? Players on Facebook Live. What did Ben have to do with that? Like, what do you got to do with Antonio Brown taping the coach talking? What's Ben supposed to do? So there have been so many situations about Pittsburgh, their assistant coaches, their head coaches, the national anthem, that had nothing to do with Big Ben. Now, could Big Ben have helped the situation? Yeah, but Pittsburgh, there's been too many fires to put out. Yeah, it's easy to blame it on the quarterback because he does have a speaking role. The thing that I learned under Denny Green, and the one thing that we did as players, we made sure that people understood that Denny wasn't going to be the blame. So Denny, as the head coach, Tomlin as the head coach, he is the general. But us as veteran players and leaders of our group, we're lieutenants. So we're supposed to run our part of the team. And that's what Pittsburgh doesn't have. They don't have a good lieutenant at running back. You know why they're running back? Because he's always talking about himself. They don't have a good lieutenant at quarterback. You know the reason why? Quarterback's always complaining. Don't know when I'm going to play. Don't know why they should have called that play right there. They don't have a great lieutenant in AB. Why? Because he's about himself. Facebook Live. Right. They don't have a lot of veterans on the defense who have a speaking part. So they got a lot of dysfunctions going around Pittsburgh, and they've been there for several years.
Could you argue that dysfunction works for them, works in their favor?
I think they overcome it. I don't think it's a positive, but I don't think it's as much as...
that's why we're not talking about them today. They overcame it. They lost to Jacksonville at home.
You hold on. It can't be that simple. It can't simply
Well, what's it about then?
That Jacksonville was better that day. How about that?
Oh, well, they played them twice.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh.
Right, but
Jacksonville was better both days.
Oh, okay, sure, but it wouldn't have mattered that the first game wouldn't have mattered had they won the second game.
It does matter when you're trying to talk about the talented teams. What did they do when they faced this team? Mm-hmm. All right? Jacksonville crushed them. You know what they said when we're getting ready to face them again? Hey, Jenna, I ain't worried about y'all. I'm worried about my next match. Y'all ain't even that serious. And they lost again.
I understand that.
And I told you this was going to happen. I told you they would be distracted.
Yeah,
I told you
you told me it was going to happen up until
before the season in Chicago when they had the dispute over the national anthem. I told you this would continue.
Correct. And you did, CC, but you also, like me and everyone, picked the Steelers to beat the Jags. Thought they would overcome that. You also, like me, after the New England game, said Pittsburgh was the better team. They just didn't win the game. Those things happen.
I didn't say Pittsburgh was a better team. I said Pittsburgh played well enough to win the game. Jesse James did not help. I don't get into that. I don't play Madden. All right? It's not about no roster. It's who plays the game better between the lines.
Right. And that,
so I don't base everything on, oh, man, Pittsburgh's really, really talented. Well, how many Super Bowls have they won, this group?
This group?
This group.
This group's won one. I guess if you're saying this specific Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell has won 0.
0.
CC, but hold on. There's a lot to get into here, so if I may. You did say after the New England game that we both thought Pittsburgh was the better team that day, but didn't win.
Pittsburgh's more talented.
Okay. Well, we could pull the tape, but we don't need to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who plays the best. It doesn't matter who wins the game.
Agreed.
I thought Minnesota was a better team than Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. You know what they're doing now?
They're home.
Okay.
But it's not, the teams can, the point that I was making when Jenna asked if it helps them, and I said they overcome it, is Pittsburgh.
What have they overcome? Where are their trophies at?
Can I please try to explain it to you?
Go ahead.
You can overcome certain things and still not become Super Bowl champions. Do you think if the Steelers had no distractions this year, they're playing in this game? Maybe.
Yes.
Definitely.
Because distractions help. They lack of distractions help you reach your goal. Yes.
Agreed, lack of distractions help you reach your goal. But that doesn't, you could have a distraction-free season like Minnesota did and still just get beat.
Well, they had a miracle. They had a miracle that happened. They were trying to recover from the miracle.
Okay, they could have lost the miracle game. Right? At home, and got beat.
But it wouldn't have been a team thing. It wouldn't have been like, man, is Minnesota focused? They didn't have the type of thing. They went through 2 or 3 different quarterbacks the last couple of years, but they managed. Mm-hmm. So I don't like making excuses for people, all right? These are professional people, all right? They don't do it the right way, and the results are, in the postseason, they're not there. You can make excuses for them if you want to.
CC, I'm not making excuses for them.
You think Mike Tomlin's happy with the team and the productivity the last 3 years?
I think every team that has this level of talent doesn't win the Super Bowl is disappointed. I also think that when you say there's this group no success, well, they have more regular season and playoff success from a wins perspective than any team but New England.
So did Peyton Manning. Can you cash them at the bank?
What do you
mean?
The
regular season wins.
I said regular season and playoff than any team but New England. I understand they haven't finished it off, but to attribute it simply to, because they had a national anthem controversy in week 5.
No, Nick. It's been many things, and I've just been trying to tell you. You're just slow to the learn.
No, I'm not slow to the learn, CC. You
like Pittsburgh.
What?
You like Mike Tomlin.
Sure.
You like Le'Veon Bell.
But I mean, I think he's a great player. I mean, it's not like I have a personal relationship with any of these guys.
To me, I just believe that the small things when you're on a team are far more important than talking about their talent. They are underachievers.
Yeah, okay, but this is in my eyes, this is a results-based analysis. You know which team did the small things terribly? The '95 Cowboys, who were partying all week, including the head coach having all-night parties the week of the Super Bowl. But it was fine because they won the game. There are plenty of teams in sports history that have dealt with distractions and become champions. And there are plenty of teams that have been totally buttoned up, that have had no distractions and got their ass kicked.
Let me know in the last 10 years the teams that have been distracted and won championships. I want you to make a list.
Seattle, the first year they won the championship. The second year they were this close.
What were their distractions? Tell me, what were their distractions?
Okay, well, they had a quarterback change before the season, if I'm not mistaken, with Matt Flynn to Russell Wilson.
Oh, that's not a distraction. One guy's better than the other guy.
Okay,
but go ahead.
Marshawn Lynch and his general disposition towards the entire team, that was not just the final year he was there, CC.
Yeah, he was one person.
Okay, so if
that was one person.
CC, it's going to be very different.
And they end up being Super Bowl champions and would have been twice Super Bowl champions if they had given the ball to the crazy guy.
Exactly.
It wasn't attitude, though.
Huh?
That was a coach. It wasn't attitude that prevented them.
Okay, well, I'm not
The coach made a play. He made the wrong call for them winning 2 Super Bowls.
Right. And
that wasn't the attitude, all right? It wasn't the distractions in the locker room.
Okay, well, listen, it's going to be very hard for me to convince you of this if when I give you examples, you say they don't count. But the point is, there are teams across sports, including football, that did, what do we think about the Bears, the '85 Bears? Did they?
They weren't distracted. Okay. They had the best defense in the history of the National Football League.
Which is why
what were they distractions? What were the distractions?
Am I crazy that
I was in college then? Let me know what the distractions were.
The Giants with LT. How about that? Were there distractions when the best player on the team shows up for practice when he wants, when he has? Of course there were, but they overcame it. It's not a positive.
Listen, let me tell you something. The rumors of LT not showing up to practice when he wants, those are lies. Okay?
Okay, well then he lied in his own book.
I mean, those are lies.
Now that the NBA season is heating up, I wanted to talk about another podcast we do at Fox Sports, and that's Cris Broussard's In the Zone. Each week, Cris breaks down what's trending in the NBA and the biggest names in the league. Previous guests include Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, John Wall, and myself. So if you love the NBA, make sure to subscribe to In the Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, guys, baseball news this morning is non-baseball news this morning. For the 6th straight year, Barry Bonds, baseball's home run king, and Roger Clemens, the 7-time Cy Young winner, were both not voted into the Hall of Fame. Statistically, Bonds and Clemens are clearly 2 of the sport's giants, but their paths to stardom littered with steroid allegations. If it means anything to you, they did get their highest vote percentage, but it wasn't enough to get in. Both a bit less than 20% of the vote away from reaching Cooperstown. CC, would you vote for Bonds and Clemens to get into the Hall of Fame if it was up to you?
Did they use steroids?
Let's say yes.
No.
Yes. Really?
Absolutely not. Because I know it changes the competitive balance in sports. You're talking about a huge advantage if a person is using growth hormones or steroids to assist them in what they're doing. The playing field is not level. So if the playing field is not level, why would I vote them into Cooperstown? Like, if they've got some type of advantage over the other players, like, why would I put them in? Like, if the Hall of Fame is supposed to be the Hall of Fame, then why would I? Like, this is not that difficult of a question for me.
Wow. You say all the time not to try to guess what you're going to say on things that I shouldn't, but I'm shocked by this one.
Why would I let someone that's made life easier get into a place that's supposed to be an hallowed place? Like, why would I do that?
Go ahead, John.
What about some of these players that were pretty much could have been locked into the Hall of Fame before they started doing steroids?
Well,
Barry Bonds was on pace.
That was their choice.
Okay, so it was the decision to do steroids.
So if you go your whole life and you decide not to drink, and then one night you decide to tie one on, and you get in your car and you have a car accident, and it ends up hurting people, do you think your past record is going to help you out from that decision that you made that night?
Well, but hold on a second. First of all, the idea that we're going to keep baseball players out of the Hall of Fame because they did things to enhance their performance, we have to redo the entire Hall of Fame. We have to take out...
You mean redo the whole Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame. We have to take out all the guys that scuffed baseballs that it was just a wink and a nod. We have to take out the guys that got in on famous spitballs. We have to take out the guys they used to have in the clubhouses. 2 coffee pots, one with uppers in it, one without uppers in it. And we have to take out a lot of guys who made it in the Bonds-Clemens steroid era, who we believe likely did steroids, but we can't prove it. Just like, by the way, you can't prove it on Barry. You can't prove it on Roger, even though we know they did steroids. Like, they haven't conceded to it, they haven't admitted to it, but the Hall of Fame...
If they were Hall of Famers before this, let's just say that's the case. They had Hall of Fame career before that. Why did they use steroids?
Oh, I'll tell you why Barry Bonds did it. I'll tell you why. Because Barry Bonds was the best baseball player alive, and he was better than Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa for their entire lives. And then all of a sudden, he sees these 2 guys become the face of the sport artificially, and he said, okay, you know what? Then I'm going to show you...
So you're going to risk your overall health using steroids just so you can keep up with Sammy Sosa and them?
Well, I think that's clearly what he did.
Okay, well, no problem. Then you don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Man, the Hall of Fame, it has to be, to me, you walk into a sports Hall of Fame. If I am willing to spend however many days it takes to go through the entire place, I need to be able to learn the entire history of that sport. And to keep out the single greatest player of all time in Barry Bonds, it's dishonoring the fans. Put on his plaque, suspected of steroids. Put on his plaque, known to use steroids. Like, that is part of the history of it.
Yeah, that's a great example to kids. You know something? You want to be a high achiever? We'll let you use steroids. It doesn't even matter. But what kind of message are we sending to young people?
Dude,
what about working hard? What about I'm getting ready to work harder than the next guy? Because that's where I come from. Mm-hmm. I get up early and I stay late. And I'm not going to help or benefit someone who's going to take the easy route. Because you still have to work out anyway. So for someone that's going to take the shortcut, to me, they will never be able to win me over when you're talking about elite achievers.
Sissy, you say, what are we going to tell the kids? Like, in history class, do we not teach, when we're teaching about American presidents, do we skip over Nixon because he got impeached? It's part of American history. We have the good and the bad. You can't tell the history of baseball without 7-time MVP Barry Bonds.
Yeah, and you can't tell the history of Barry Bonds without saying that his career was enhanced by performance-enhancing drugs.
Absolutely. So you just think it's just
well, go ahead and live with it.
A flat disqualification.
Absolutely. You are done. Done, because you got a huge advantage. I don't think you understand what steroids do to your body. It gives you a huge advantage on your ability to be able to recover every single day. So you know what you can do? You can work like a maniac like Jenna every single day. Your body doesn't build up the lactic acid, so your ability to be able to recover is drastically better than the next guy who's just going out there grunting. Guys out there just trying to worry about his hydration, worrying about his sleep. People who use growth and anabolic steroids have a huge advantage.
Cece, I do understand that.
Oh, okay, we'll just let them in.
If it were just a couple guys, then maybe I would understand the argument. But
you didn't ask me about a bunch of guys. You asked me about these 2. That was the question.
Agreed, but let me finish, please. But it's because they played in an era where it was dozens upon dozens.
I played in the era, Nick. Mm-hmm. I don't use the excuse. There was hundreds of guys suspended from the NFL over steroids. I don't use that excuse. I had the same opportunity. I knew what was going on, but I decided to stick to grunt. You know what? I'm going to get up at 6. My trainer going to call me. We're going to hit the track at 6. We're going to lift weights after that. We're going to do yoga after that. We're going to also use all natural products. We're going to remove all the other artificial stuff from your diet. You're getting ready to do all that kind of stuff. Yes, that's what I did. I knew there was guys using steroids, but I chose not to. Because I knew it was important. It was important for me to be able to get everything I got out of what God gave me. Not out of what some needle gave me, only what God gave me. And I worked as hard as I could, all right? I mean, I wish I was as good as Jerry Rice. I wasn't. But I guarantee if I had taken some steroids, I guarantee my numbers would have been a lot different. Okay, so no. If you utilize steroids, no. It's a huge advantage. Absolutely no.
What? Just real quick before we go, why didn't you?
Because I didn't need it. Because I didn't need it. Because I believe in elbow grease. That's what I believe in, getting up and working hard. That's what I believe in. And I believe every man should be measured on that, on an equal playing field. I love Tom Brady. If I heard anything about, man, Tom Brady used steroids, man, get him out of there. Absolutely. Any other great player. Now, y'all can do what y'all want in baseball. But in the National Football League, you have some steroids, that's a huge advantage. And there's too many of us that got up early, busted our butt, did all the right stuff, that, no, I'm not going to give you my graces. You don't deserve to get in here. If it's a special place, heck no. Get out of here with that mess, man. I wish I'd have seen that before the show.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
quickly, before we go, did they get in or not?
They'll eventually get in, and I would vote for them, but that was awesome. Like, I've never disagreed with someone so much, but enjoyed hearing it more than I just did that.
Yep.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.